To discuss a standing wave ratio, we need to consider the incidence, the normal incidence of an electromagnetic wave at an interface. So let us say that the setup is like this. We have the interface at z equal to 0, this is the z-axis, and we have region 1 here and region 2. Say region 1 is a dielectric and region 2 may or may not be a dielectric. Now let's say that a wave is incident from this side. An electromagnetic wave is incident from this side. It's propagating in the z direction. And let the electric field of the incident wave be in this direction, that is out of the board. And since it is propagating towards the positive z direction, we can, if we drop the e raised to j omega t term because it's going to be there throughout, we can write it as vector E superscript I, and the superscript is to say that it's the incident field, as we had the notation that we followed in the earlier discussions. And since it's propagating in the positive z direction, we have minus j beta 1 z, minus j beta 1 z. Beta 1 z is the phase constant, propagation constant, so to say, because region 1 is a dielectric, there is no alpha. So beta 1 becomes the phase constant, which is indeed the propagation constant in the medium 1. And a portion of this is reflected once it encounters the interface, and the remaining part is transmitted into the second region. So we can likewise write transmitted field with a superscript t, and since that is also propagating in the z direction, we have e power minus j k to z. So we use k2 here because this region may or may not be a dielectric. So alpha may or may not be 0. And the subscript 2 is to say that it is in region 2. And the reflected field can be expressed as E r, and since it's propagating in the negative z direction, e power j beta 1 z. Now, from the previous discussion on the incidence, the reflection of plane waves, we know that in this case theta I is 0, theta I is 0, and consequently theta r, theta t is also 0. So now if we take the case of perpendicular polarization, the reflection of plane waves which we discussed earlier, in that if we take the case of perpendicular polarization, and if we set these terms as 0 in it, we can observe that the reflection coefficient will be equal to eta 2 minus eta 1 divided by eta 1 plus eta 2, which is gamma, capital gamma, and which is, since eta 2, region 2 is may or may not, region 2 may or may not be a dielectric. So eta 2 need not necessarily be a real quantity. Hence, the reflection coefficient gamma is complex in general, and we can express it like this. So phi is its phase angle, and this is the magnitude of the reflection coefficient. So we get this by setting these angles as 0 in the general reflection of plane waves which we discussed earlier for perpendicular polarization. Okay, now having obtained the expression for the reflection coefficient and reflection coefficient. Of course, this is a special case of the oblique incidence which we discussed earlier. But still, having obtained this, let us now discuss more on this so that we can understand what is the standing wave ratio, what we mean by standing wave ratio. So essentially what happens is, on the left hand side, if you see on the left hand side of this figure of this particular representation, on the left hand side, that is in region 1, we have basically a wave which is propagating in the forward direction. Of course, e raised to j omega t is also there. I will not write it because it's there throughout. A wave propagating in the forward direction, and there is also a wave which is propagating in the reverse direction. Forward direction in the sense along towards the z, along the positive z direction, and the one which is reflected from the interface is propagating away in the sense towards the negative z direction. So you have basically a forward propagating wave and a wave which is propagating in the reverse direction. So we can write in the left hand side, that is in region 1, we have a forward propagating wave and a wave which is propagating in the other direction, the reverse direction. Now, since we have seen ER by E naught, that is the reflection coefficient, is e raised to j phi, which is of course eta 2 minus eta 1 by eta 2 plus eta 1, which was derived a short while ago. Since we know this, we can replace ER with this. We can replace, sorry, this is incident. It's incident. So we can replace the ER in this expression with a product of gamma and EI. So when we do that, we will end up getting this as equal to, since the polarization direction has not changed, we can write it like this. E raised to j beta 1 z plus phi. So this phi is the phase part of the reflection coefficient, and here I have the magnitude of the reflection coefficient, which is quite obvious. So ER can be replaced by EI into the magnitude of reflection coefficient into e raised to j phi. That's what is appearing here. And since the direction of ER, the vector direction, is the same as the vector EI, we can simply write it like this. Now, for further discussion, I will drop this because it's just a common term which is there. It can be added in the end also if required. So we'll drop this for further discussion. And now we have with us an expression like a forward propagating wave plus a wave which is propagating in the direction opposite to this with a magnitude, with an amplitude less than, of course, that of this. The maximum amplitude it can have is 1, and that happens when it is reflected fully from here. Otherwise, this will always be, the magnitude of this will be always less than 1. And then, of course, it has a phase term also in general. Now, we can calculate, we can arrive at a magnitude of this. So the net effect is that on the left hand side you have, as I said, a wave propagating in the plus z direction and a wave reflected from the interface which is propagating in the opposite direction. So the combined effect of this can be modeled. In fact, I have added a simulation after this. You'll see that simulation appear shortly. So I have simulated this effect of the adding up of a wave propagating in this direction and a wave which is reflected and propagating in the opposite direction. The sum of these two, how it looks like, I have created a simulation and it will appear shortly. But before I show the simulation, what we have to understand is that the effect of that will be, since the forward propagating wave is having an amplitude which is more than or equal to this, at best it's going to be equal to this, in the sense the reflected wave can at its best can have only an amplitude as much as that of the forward propagating wave. Otherwise, its amplitude is less. So basically, you are going to have a wave which is propagating in the plus z direction and a reflected wave which is weaker in its strength. So the effect of these two will be that there will be a net flow of electromagnetic energy in the forward direction, because the forward the plus z direction propagating field is stronger. So there will be a net propagation in the plus z direction. But because of this reflection, there will be a periodic variation in the amplitude of the wave. A periodic variation in the amplitude, that periodic variation will be with respect to z. So before I show the simulation, first point to remember here is that there will be a net propagation in the forward direction, because the forward propagating wave is stronger, always stronger than the reflected wave. The reflected wave can be only as strong as the forward propagating wave. So there will be a net forward propagating wave, and there will be a variation in the amplitude which will be periodic with respect to z. So before I show that simulation, we'll just try to understand what is that periodic variation in the amplitude, and then we'll see the simulation. So the periodic variation in amplitude, to understand the periodic variation in the amplitude, remember that this is associated with e raised to j omega t, which I have not shown here. There is an e raised to j omega t here as well as here, which we can take out and keep it aside for the time being. Now we can express this as cos beta 1 z minus j sin beta 1 z plus gamma cos beta 1 z plus phi plus j gamma sin beta 1 z plus phi. You can combine these two terms and write the imaginary term separately and the real term separately. So that means you can have something like that is, this is the real term, and then you had a minus j. So if I take that minus common, I will have minus j, and I put a minus here, sin beta 1 z minus j. That j comes out. Yes, it has come out. We have put it in brackets, so you'll have it like this. So cos beta 1 z plus magnitude gamma cos beta 1 z plus phi minus j within brackets sin beta 1 z minus magnitude gamma sin beta 1 z plus phi. Now you can express this again in polar form. So square of this plus square of this under root, that will be the magnitude of this, and that stands for the amplitude of the wave. So if I square this and add it with the square of this, cos square beta 1 z sin square beta 1 z will add up to give 1. Square of this and square of this will add up to give capital gamma square, and then you will have 2 gamma cos beta 1 z plus phi here when you square it, and to that you will be adding 2 gamma sin beta 1 z and sin beta 1 z plus phi. That will be a negative sign, of course, because you are squaring this. You got sin square, you merge it with this. You got sin square here, you merge it with this, and now you have 2 cos beta 1 z magnitude gamma cos beta 1 z plus phi, and you have minus 2 sin beta 1 z magnitude gamma sin beta 1 z plus phi. So when you add them up, you will get plus 2 magnitude gamma, and you have cos beta 1 z plus phi minus sin beta 1 z plus phi. The result will be cos 2 beta 1 z plus phi, and this comes under root. This will come under root. This will be the magnitude of this, and then you can have, I will not write it down here, e raised to j, or rather e raised to minus j, all these things, sin beta 1 z minus magnitude gamma sin beta 1 z plus phi whole divided by cos beta, all those things I will not write here, And remember, with that, there will be an e raised to j omega t, which was here outside, which we have kept it aside. So we will concentrate only on this. So this will play the role of the amplitude of the wave. E raised to j omega t is the time variation, and the remaining part which you get here in terms of e raised to minus j tan inverse, all those things will add up to the phase of it. So we concentrate only on the magnitude. So this is the magnitude. Now, to understand or to discuss more on this magnitude, we will, for convenience, assume phi is 0. Purely for convenience, it becomes easier to discuss. Later I will show what happens, or you can yourself see what happens if phi is not 0. For convenience, we'll assume phi is 0, and we will redraw the geometric arrangement here. This is the interface, region 2, region 1. Now, if phi is 0, you can see what happens at z0. At z0, what exactly at the interface, what happens to the amplitude of the wave on the left-hand side. If phi is 0, you can see that when z is 0, you have 1 plus magnitude gamma square plus 2 magnitude gamma. Cos 0 is 1. So this becomes at z0, phi 0, this becomes square root of 1 plus gamma square plus 2 gamma, which is nothing but 1 plus magnitude gamma square, which is nothing but 1 plus magnitude gamma whole square under root, which is the same as 1 plus magnitude gamma. So this is the amplitude at z is equal to 0 of the reflected wave. And you can see that since the term cos 2 beta 1 z plus phi, of course you have taken phi as 0, even otherwise, since this term is there, the variation of the amplitude with respect to z will have a sinusoidal pattern. So you can expect a periodic pattern to be more appropriate. There will be a periodic variation in the magnitude, the amplitude like this. And the maximum we saw just now, it is 1 plus capital gamma, and that will be here as well. 1 plus magnitude gamma, that will be here as well. This also will be the same. And the minimum occurs when again, remember, for convenience you have taken phi as 0. The minimum occurs when 2 beta 1 z is such that cos 2 beta 1 z becomes negative. So one possible value is when 2 beta 1 z is equal to pi. When 2 beta 1 z is pi, cos 2 beta 1 z becomes cos pi, which is minus 1. Phi is 0 for our convenience, minus 1. So what happens is 1 plus gamma square minus 2 gamma under root. That gives us 1 minus gamma. So the minimum is 1 minus gamma and occurs when one of the possible values is 2 beta 1 z is equal to pi, which is z equal to pi by 2 beta 1. Beta 1 is itself 2 pi by lambda. So pi gets cancelled, you get lambda by 4. So the minimum occurs at lambda by 4 from here. And then the next maximum, by same argument, you can show that the next maximum occurs at lambda by 2. And the next minimum occurs at lambda by 4, 2 lambda by 4, which is lambda by 2, 3 lambda by 4, and so on and so forth. So this is what we understand regarding the amplitude of the reflected wave. I will show the simulation now shortly. Now again, if phi were not 0, instead of having this peak here, 1 plus gamma, it would have been somewhere else. That's all. It would have been somewhere else. So for example, maybe it would have been something like this. If phi were not 0, if phi were having some other value, it would have been like this. But this basic behavior of the distance between two peaks being pi by 2, or the distance between two dips, so to say. I don't know the exact word, is maybe nadir or whatever it is I'm not getting it right now. The distance between two of the peaks is pi by 2. Similarly, this distance is also pi by 2. Successive peaks is pi by 2. Or the distance between peak and the low will be pi by 4. So this pattern will be the same, but if phi is 0, you will have the peak here. If phi is not 0, it will be shifted. So the simulation we will see shortly, but before that we have to also define what we mean by the standing wave ratio. So the standing wave ratio is by definition the maximum amplitude that you can have for the reflected wave, which is 1 plus gamma, divided by the minimum, which is 1 minus gamma. This is by definition the standing wave ratio. And the maximum value which the standing wave ratio, the reflection coefficient can have is 1. That is when the entire wave is reflected. There is no transmitted component. When the reflection coefficient is 1, standing wave ratio becomes infinity. And the smallest value the reflection coefficient can have is 0. There is no reflection, 100% transmission. And then the standing wave ratio becomes 1. So when there is no transmission, that is 100% reflection, the standing wave ratio is infinity. And when there is no reflection and 100% transmission, the standing wave ratio is 1. And you can see that when there is 100% reflection, 1 minus capital gamma will be 0. So in that particular case, you will have 1 plus gamma some value, which is, of course, it will be 2. Of course, scaled with the magnitude of electric field, which you have removed for the time being. And then this will be 0 because gamma is 1. So the picture would be somewhat like this in that case. The picture would be somewhat like this. So 1 minus gamma becomes 0 and 1 plus gamma becomes 2. And the amplitude, the ratio of these two will be infinity. That is what the standing wave ratio is. Now we will take a look at the simulation. So this is the simulation waveform. You can see that there are two sinusoids here. The one on the top is the amplitude variation, which we discussed in some detail a short while ago. The square root of 1 plus magnitude gamma square plus 2 magnitude gamma cos 2 beta 1 z plus phi. That is the one which you are seeing at the top. And the other one which you see, if you observe it carefully, you can see that it is propagating in the positive z direction. And the positive, you can see the horizontal axis is the positive z, is the z axis. And you can see that the second sine wave, which is fluctuating in amplitude, is propagating towards the positive z direction. And you can see its amplitude, as I said, it's fluctuating. The fluctuation is because of the reflection from the interface. And you can see that, say for example, if you observe minus 600, you can see on the z-axis, the horizontal axis, minus 600 if you observe, you just see the variation in the amplitude of the wave which is propagating. You can see that its amplitude is limited to the point where it now goes and touches the sine wave at the top. At the same time, if you do a similar observation, if you do at a value which is slightly less than minus 400, slightly less than minus 400, you can see that the waveform which is propagating forward in the z direction goes through a range of amplitude. It goes through the entire amplitude range as depicted by the sine wave at the top. So this is what a standing this is what a situation where you have a reflection happening from an interface interferes with a wave which is propagating in the forward direction. Since the reflection is not as strong as the wave which is propagating in the forward direction, there will be a net flow in the forward direction, but there will be a variation in the amplitude, as you can see here. Further, you can observe that the reflection coefficient here is 0.5. You can see that by looking at the peak value of the sine wave at the top, which is more than 1.4. It should be around 1.5 if I am not mistaken, and you can so before we wind up this video, there is one small point to be discussed. Of course, I will not go to the details here, though there is a lot more to discuss. I will only discuss the essential point here. The discussion to come up now is on Poynting vector. Now, suppose we do E cross H. That is, we take the cross product of electric field and the magnetic field. Now, cross product will result in a vector. So, if you take the vector field E and you take the vector field H and take a cross product, you will get another vector field. Now, that vector field is the Poynting vector. Now, you know the unit of electric field is volt per meter, and H, the magnetic field, has a unit ampere per meter. Now, when you take the cross product, the unit of the resultant vector will be volt ampere by meter square, which is nothing but watt per meter square in terms of units. Dimensionally, it is watts per meter square. Now, what this Poynting vector, what the specialty of this vector is that if you take any surface, and if you integrate over this surface the vector E cross H, what you will be doing is E cross H ds over this surface. Now, this is dimensionally watt per meter square, and when you integrate it over a surface, the result will be watt per meter square multiplied by the area of the surface, and the result will be in watts. And what you get in watts when you perform a surface integral of E cross H, that is, when you perform a surface integral of the Poynting vector, what you get is the amount of power which is crossing that surface. So this is what we mean by the Poynting vector. Probably we can show it as P for the moment. Poynting vector P, and its units will be watt per meter square. It is essentially a power density. It's density because it is per meter square, and integration of the Poynting vector over a surface will give you the power which is crossing that surface. So this is one final point before we wind up this video.